welcome to another episode of the podcast, of your podcast. I am more than the immigrant you had in mind. I'm your host, Yannick Oho Bambe. And as you know, this is a podcast on which stories about immigrant and refugees coming to Canada will be told on a regular basis. So in the studio today, we have another special guest. And we have the honor to be in conversation with Alejandra. Is Alejandra? That's how you pronounce it? Lara-Espinosa.
Okay. Yes, perfect.
Awesome. I got it right. Right. So, how are you today? Alejandra?
I'm doing great. I'm quite happy to be here. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you for this space.
No, we're so glad to have you as well. So let's just get right into it. So can you just introduce yourself? Tell us who you are, just briefly, please.
Sure. My name is Alejandra Lara. I'm originally from Mexico, born and raised there until my mid-20s. Then I moved to Canada in 2009, and I've been here for 15 years, so do the math. I moved to the Cowichan Valley in 2016, more or less, and just very, very happy to be here. I came as a student originally. I went to UVic when I first moved to Canada, and I was doing, I went to the School of Earth and Ocean Sciences in UVic. Okay. It was a very, very good experience for me. I was very passionate about what I was doing, but life had many different turns, and then I was like missing a component that was, people. When I was doing all this science stuff, it involved a lot of office work. So I really needed kind of a more human to human kind of component in my life. So I was for a long time getting all kinds of training in that towards that direction. And then I'm finally up to a point where I just really feel like I've done it all, like all I wanted to do. And right now I'm working for the Cowichan Intercultural Society, which I enjoy a big deal. And yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell.
No, absolutely. I mean, I've heard you talk about coming here as a student and pursuing an earth and ocean science degree, which is quite unusual. I mean, not a lot of people that I know actually pursue this type of degree, this type of field. So I would love to hear you tell us more about that particular subject. And also, but before that, you said you came here as a student to Canada. So I'm curious to know if Canada was always your first option, as far as moving from when you were thinking about moving from Mexico, or did you have any other options?
Yes. So when I was doing my undergrad school in Mexico, I was working with a team that was collaborating with both the United States and Canada. Okay. And it was a group of scientists that were doing research along the coast, the North Pacific coast. So that's off Vancouver Island, and all the way south to the Baja Peninsula in Mexico. Okay. And it was a collaborative effort. It was a very, very impressive funding they had actually for that time of day. It was big, and their whole goal was to understand more on acidification, particularly in this region, because ocean acidification had been extensively studied in areas where that are very well known for vulnerability when it comes to that. So So they were going to like Gulf of Mexico, for example. There's lots of studies in Australia around the reefs and that kind of stuff, but nothing had been previously done along here. And the reason why there were too many studies in like around the reefs is, first of all, because the corals are the first ones to suffer from acidified waters. It's but also because of the temperature being a factor and other circumstances that kind of bring just kind of show all the red flags for scientists, right, to study that. However, around this region, it had been almost overlooked just because. There's no red flags, and there's several other factors. But then we discover around that time, they started noticing around that time that there are certain circumstances in the oceans, like especially things that have to do with how the ocean dynamic goes, that was actually important, and it was actually producing. We're starting to observe signs of acidified waters, and that rang the bell, and then that got a lot of scientists on board to do that, and it was very important. It was massive. It was like that's why they got that kind of funding. So sorry for the long story, but at the time, the person I was working with, my mentor, said, well, like you did all this for like undergrad. A little piece of what I did contributed to that, but it was very, very small. And I co-author just one publication from that. And so then he said, well, why don't you just kind of try to work with the same team? And there happened to be somebody from Canada at DFO, right in Victoria, and so I sent all my paperwork. I was so excited, and that's how I came here.
Oh, that's a beautiful story. I mean, what I hear, I hear like a kind of like fast track entry to Canada. Unlike, because we're talking about the immigrant experience, right? And I suppose every immigrant experience is different, right? But for you, it sounds like you came as almost sort of like from a privileged place because of your knowledge and your and because the follow-up question, of course, would have been, how was the reception from the Canadian when you came here? But from what you're saying, it's almost like you were on a fast track to. So can you just tell us a little bit more about that, your reception here and?
The reception was great. I more than anything, it was just kind of a little bit of a shock for a young guy, like I was in my mid-20s. But at the same time, being young also like bring so much energy to like, well, I have to do this all day, not like kind of navigating through all that settlement end of it, which is things just simple as like get your I don't know, for example, start a bank account or you know what I mean, all that stuff. It was like it came somehow easy. Other things I think would have been a little more challenging for me. Was a real shock. Not Canadian culture at all, because I actually found it quite welcoming, and I was so happy and so admired on how warm it felt, and how I wouldn't say completely similar to my culture, but there's quite a bit of similarities. I would say it's not like, I don't know, going to Japan right now would probably be a very different story. It's like a bit of a night and day, right? But for in the daily life, it was amazing, and I'm super grateful for it. In this scientific community, I I wouldn't say I didn't feel welcome. It's not. It would be harsh, but it's definitely a very, very different culture to what I was in the academy, to what I was used to. I was more used to cooperative work, team, and always talking to colleagues and always kind of getting feedback from everybody and that kind of atmosphere. And here I felt it was just everybody was just kind of in their own business, and there wasn't a whole lot of sharing.
Okay.
And so that was quite shocking. But I also think that when you encounter something like that, you just kind of have to sort of move around and understand what the limitations are. And find your way towards it, and that's kind of what I did. And I, little by little, I started finding like little niches and people that were a little more responsive, or there were other people that came from other countries, and we ended up being like siblings, right? Like just kind of like everybody was sharing stuff, and then at the very end, other people would come too and kind of join us on that, and then it would I just basically just found my way around. But I would have been that would define my reception here.
Absolutely. So let me ask you this: if you were to advise your younger self at that time, or even a younger lady, or coming from Mexico or anywhere in the world coming to Canada, what would be the one piece of advice that you would give them or her?
I would tell her, hey, you're gonna make it, no worries. I did have a lot of meltdowns and crying moments over that, just because I wasn't sure what I was capable of. And so, like, even things like just going to my first lecture in English on aqueous geochemistry, it was just kind of like, I know, I left the lecture like in tears, because I couldn't understand a word. Like, it was, I could understand all English on the street, like, or talking to somebody, but the lecture was something quite different and unexplored for me. I would just kind of give her a pat on the back and just, tell her, no worries, it's all gonna be good.
Fine. Just trust the process.
Yes.
Wow, that's beautiful. So we talked about the challenges, and you also, when we exchanged prior to this conversation, you also talked to us about your achievement, and one of your most significant achievement being your master's degree. So first of all, I'm still curious about this ocean and earth science, because I just want to know, because I know nothing about it, and I'm just curious to know about how does one get into that field. First, if you can just give us a little bit of your story about the whole degree and that field, and also talk to us about your achievement, please.
Yes. So how I got on that field, I think just being such an urban kind of person, who I always had a curiosity for nature.
Okay.
And there was also this thing that happened to me that was when it came to vocational decisions. I liked it all, really. I liked absolutely everything, and even things like literature and reading, and so it was hard for me to like decide what I liked the best.
Okay.
And something I really, really liked about ocean sciences is that it really covers it all. Well, not literature, but it really covers it all. Like, it has, and everything is linked at the same time. So, ocean dynamics, things like currents and water upwelling, and then that also like that is linked to like all these geological processes, right? Like sediment movement and and even hot spots in the water, like all the and then that is completely linked to all these ocean chemistry and then or even things that are more the humankind, like carbon dioxide emissions, right? That end up it's a gas exchange really that ends up in the in the ocean, and that's why it's so concerning. And then never mind all the organisms and the food chains and all that, and so there's so much to it that I knew that was the right decision for me, because I liked it all, and I was just that was my call.
No, that's very interesting. I mean, a couple of thoughts came into my mind, and it seems like it was a well-suited call as well for you coming to BC, and BC being the place that it is as far as the nature and the environment, and the thought that came into my mind was about, just wanted to hear your thought, obviously, about everything that has to do with I'm thinking about the First Nations right now, even as we just celebrated Truth and Reconciliation, and how they insist and they talk a lot about being in harmony with our environment. It seems like in your degree you actually go through the science about how to sort of cultivate a better relationship with our environment. Can you just give us your thoughts on that science aspect, and also the philosophical aspect of it, which is about just being in harmony with our environment, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that would be probably one of the things that I admire the most about what we have as legacy from both ancestors and indigenous cultures. As you may know, Mexico is pretty rich in that department. Sadly, not so much on truth and reconciliation. That we're very, very far from that. But definitely there's so much teaching and so much learnings that are that we have inherited without knowing that we have that richness from these all these legacy from these cultures. And they all, if you look at all of these tribes in Mexico, they all have that. It's almost like an inherited, I forgot the word, but it's like something you're born with. And they have practiced it for years, and not far off from the big cities or anything. And then they still teach us so much from that. So that, of course, I wouldn't say it was a deciding factor for me, but it's something that I always have in mind, and I always had in mind while going through all the the schooling and all that. And then it was also very satisfying to find out that most people that were in that field, actually I'm gonna say all of them, like, never met anybody who wouldn't have that awareness and have that consciousness. And then and mostly all these people are very in tune with teachings from our heritage cultures, like our First Nations and all that. And they that was always a factor in the, like, a theme, a topic in the conversations. And all the people that are in science, whether knowing or not, or whether making a very conscious effort to, like, put into factor all these all these teachings that we have from the past, like whether that happens or not, it's all geared towards a better approach always to avoid irritating the earth, right? Like it's just kind of like, whether scientific or not scientific, that is always the approach. So
no, I mean that's fascinating. So how do you think one teaches the other how to be better connected with our environment? Would even go as far as saying better connected with one another, because it's all about creating like an harmonious environment for us and for the people, even if you extend it to the issue of welcoming immigrant and welcoming the other, right? So what would you think, in your opinion, would take for someone to be in that, to get into that space where they actually are in a better harmony with everything around them, right? Because obviously for you it seems like you caught it from your heritage, and it's something that's almost, it seems like it's been passed on to you, and you're just kind of like perpetuating a legacy that is being passed on to you. But for someone who may not have had this opportunity or chance, what would you think it would take for them to be aware of their environment, and treating the environment better and treating the other better?
I think really is like the more you know, the better you address. So for a number of years, many Canadians, for example, weren't aware of what happened, for example, in residential schools, and it was it's such a historical scar, as we all know, but like it was more than anything, like for years and for a period of time and all that, it wasn't even a malicious thing of I don't care. It was really many people didn't even know that happened. It was kind of a scar that was sadly there was such a big effort from the system or whatever that was to erase that. And so therefore, people just wouldn't be in tune with that or have awareness and therefore address it in different ways or understand it. Sometimes you don't have to address it. Sometimes it's just a matter of, put yourself there or in tune to that or whatever. And so that's what I would say to somebody. Just kind of learn about it as much as you can. And the more you know about it, the more you can kind of put yourself into that situation or empathize.
Absolutely.
Yes.
No, absolutely. So I want to ask you to tell us more about your achievements. So give us some story about your achievement as you said, your master's degree. But I would also like to go into Mexican culture, right? Because from what you're saying, from what you just shared with us, there seems to be so much wisdom to gain from your culture. So I would like you to take us to Mexico and to ancient sort of Mexican culture for a bit. So, but please, could you share with us about your experience as someone who has obtained a master's degree and who feels like it's the biggest achievement as you shared with us? Could you please do that?
Okay. Yes, it was, for me, it was it just meant too many things. It wasn't just the academical part of it, which was, really, really tough. And, it was a lot of sweat and tears and endless nights and all that. So that was one part of it. But it was also, it also meant for me a new build of community. I did end up with very amazing friends that, you know, to date, we're kind of all spread over around the world. Some of them are sort of nearby, some of them in other parts of Canada. But we did build a little small community. And that for me meant a lot. And that for me, it's I've always had that very big luck. Like anywhere I lived, because I also lived in northern Mexico for a little bit, and I ended up with this gang, you know, of friends that just kind of, you know, I don't know how many years have passed from that, maybe almost 20, and I still, you know, I'm still so happy to see some of them have come and visit or text and all that. So for me, that was a big achievement too, along with, you know, the academical part, of course, was huge. But it was just the kind of the idea of feeling safe and feeling happy that, you know, I was, you know, able to have that circle here too. And that, you know, that cliche of, you know, home is wherever your heart is. And absolutely. that's it for me, really. And I guess also the just as a personal in a personal level, that for me was important too, and for like just to kind of knew that I could do that, and that I almost felt like if I could do that, I could really do anything. So that's,
absolutely,
yeah.
And could you also take us to Mexico now, and to ancient Mayan? Is it Mayan culture? The predominant, I mean, the most popular actually, you know, the Mayan civilization, right? Can you just take us a little bit on a little trip to ancient history?
Absolutely. I always had a lot of so much awareness of those things because my mom is an anthropologist.
Oh wow! Okay.
And
awesome.
And so there was a lot of history always at home, and so much awareness. We like family trips were really to go and see archaeological sites.
Okay. All right.
So that was a big part of my my development as a human being. Just kind of being all aware of that. In Mexico, the origin of all cultures is the Olmec, and from Olmec there were 5 other cultures derived from that.
Okay.
First that one being Zapotec, which is like the one that is like ended up in the South Pacific, and then Mayan, of course, was a big one, and that ended up in all the Mexican Caribbean and all the like kind of the Mayan Peninsula. Yucatan, Quintana Roo, and Campeche is kind of where that peninsula is in the Gulf of Mexico, like near the Gulf of Mexico. And then there was obviously, you know, the Aztec that ended up mostly in the central states of Mexico. And then from there derived many other sub tribes that are actually still living. And that derived in 46 ethnic groups that we have. They all have a name. They all speak a different dialect or language.
Okay.
And so What else can I say about that?
Talk to us about the philosophical, aspect of that culture.
Okay.
Yeah, please. And
Yes,
because we want to kind of draw some wisdom from
absolutely.
you. And,
One of the big things that we always learned at school was that creation of a zero that the Mayans have. For me, that had a lot of significance.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was always such a mathy kind of person. I love math.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, that was one of the coolest things that I was like, oh, that's so cool that zero came from that, right? Like in the, because when you think of ancient civilizations, there's always these big highlights. And even, Romans were doing numbers, and Babylonia, and all, like they were all doing numbers, and then they were all missing that little zero component.
Yeah, sure.
So for me, that was like the coolest thing ever, and I always was so happy that, it was Mayans that came up with that. There was so much learnings when it came to things to, for example, agricultural methods. Also things like architecture. And so I just always have so much admiration for that. Like, even when you look at things like you as a colonized country, that are prevalent now from the colony, and even things like buildings downtown and churches that were built on top of Aztec temples.
Yeah.
The foundations of these were so strong, and everything was like so. There was so much knowledge on how to form these very, very uber strong structures, and stuff, that it didn't matter how much the colonized countries had to try to trump all of that. That there was always some massive something surfacing from that, and then that, for example. It was in the 80s they were trying to do some hydro posts downtown, and then they found these massive stone that I just, for me, is only, honestly, all of that was like, it's such a gift. Absolutely. It's like I can't define how much joy that gives me. Like, just because I just to think of how this part of the history tries to be that somebody tries to erase, and then you can't. It's just there, and it's part of our blood too. Absolutely. When you go to Mexico, you see you don't see a whole lot of mixed race. You see that's what you see mostly. You don't see you don't see, for example, a group of, particularly overly white people, or too much of black race or other races, because we all ended up just kind of so mixed. And therefore, for example, things like ancestry and all that is really hard to track, because we're so mixed. And so I find that quite interesting.
Anyway. And I also heard, as you were speaking, resilience as well, when you were talking about, history trying to erase some of the foundations, but yet, even today, those foundations are still there and pretty much, visible and available. So I heard resilience very strongly. Okay, wow, awesome. So we went to Mexico. Now let's come back to BC. Yeah. And you mentioned also earlier that one of your biggest achievement was finally feeling like a sense of feeling at home here in BC, right? You talk about home, and so I would like you to talk to us a little bit about that notion of home. What does home mean to you? And just comment a little bit more on that feeling at home more and more.
Of course, yeah. I truly think that I'm very, very fortunate to be here. I am not 100% sure that I would like to learn more about what other people from other newcomers think about it, about this. I think that once you leave your country, there's always a little bit of confusion in your mind, and I don't think there's anything that you can say, okay, this is home now, or I don't even consider Mexico home for me anymore. So I'm just kind of in I wonder if we all feel like we're in some kind of a limbo.
Well, but home could be anywhere that you want to make it, as you said, you know.
But I do have to say I do feel like a very loved, adopted child that has found home.
Wow.
And that is what it's Canada for me. I have had a big privilege, which is it's just gonna sound weird, but I was diagnosed with cancer.
Okay.
And
very sorry to hear that.
But it sounds weird, but I feel very fortunate because the Canadian system was amazing to me, and I had the best treatment, and I had been the best journey when it comes to that. Like and that's probably what I meant with a very loved adopted child, because I did feel really comforted by the system, the staff, and it was the easiest process when it came to that. There was so much burden that could have been on my plate, and therefore I didn't have any of that burden. Like probably maybe about 90% of the stress, honestly, was taken care of by the system and by the country, really. Yeah. And so I have so much gratitude for that, and there were sufferings with that and fears and all that, but it sort of quickly went away because I really felt embraced and taken. I just really felt like I was in the best hands. And
we're so glad to have you here and to hear that you have overcome and this illness, and thank you for sharing this story as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes.
So as we slowly go toward the end of our conversations, I would love you to, usually what we do, we ask our guests to kind of leave us with some words of wisdom. Anything that you have in mind in your heart that you want to share. It could be, we went to Mexico, we could go back there and get some wisdom from the Mayans and from the Aztecs, or you could just anything that you would like to leave us with as words of wisdom. Yes, please.
Sure. I think for me it would be it would be really going back to what that we fortunately have that in common, which is that love for nature. I think a lot of Canadians have that, and I appreciate that very much. I do have it too, for my own number of reasons, and so that wisdom of that we have from our ancestors, not necessarily, I mean, in into big extent, to our mother cultures, right? And in all our native backgrounds and all that. Definitely, because they had a lot of knowledge and appreciation and for all of this, but also just kind of I think my last words just would be oriented to the fact that it'd be more like an invitation to just continue that, and that alone will bring the best on us. And of course embracing that past, but at the same time connecting to nature and just kind of seeing how important that is, and how we can develop in a personal level from that, and that just brings so much benefit. And that's something that my culture, like a Mexican, has, but also here we have it, and in so many other cultures have it too. And thank you very much. Well, you heard it from the earth and ocean expert herself. Just take some time to connect with our past, to try and link our past with our present, to create a better future for us and for our environment. So I think that pretty much sums it up, and we appreciate you, Alejandra, for being with us today, and we wish you all the best in all of your future endeavors. And that's it for us for today, and that's a wrap for us, and thank you very much. Until the next one.
Stay tuned for more on this podcast series, produced by the Intercultural Association of Greater Victoria, with funding from the Department of Canadian Heritage.